Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Northwestern Adventures. I'm your host, Taya Bray.
And I'm Maddie Miller.
In today's episode, we will be talking a little bit about like the preparing and the packing and like the things to do when you're in Dublin specifically. So Maddie, would you like to give us our fun fact for this episode?
Yeah, so our fun fact today is that there is no AC in Ireland. There's no AC in the hotels or the restaurants. It just doesn't get hot long enough for them to justify installing air conditioning anywhere.
Okay, so that sounds like a nightmare, you know. As someone who lives in Bakersfield, California, we already have like a super hot June through like, let's get real, October. So like how is the weather like in Dublin? Is it like cool enough, you know, for like, or you know, is it always like the perfect temperature like every day where you don't really necessarily need the AC?
When we were there in the summer, there were days where it was warm, but overall, it wasn't like unbearably hot where I was like, oh my goodness, I need my air conditioner. However, when we went to the Aran Islands while we were there, and like it did get hot there, and I was like, okay, why don't we have air conditioning? Also in Cope, like next to the coast, it was also it got pretty warm there. But overall, it wasn't really that bad without air conditioning in the summer. It does get cold in the winter though, so I think their winters are probably worse. So they do have heat.
So what time of the year are you traveling specifically? Maddie, what was your experience like at the time that you traveled?
We went there in mid to late August. So obviously it was summer, but I feel like it was late enough summer over there where it wasn't super hot and it also wasn't super wet when we were there. Because that can also be a thing where they get a lot of rain. There's a reason it's called the Emerald Isle. And that's like because it's so much rain. It makes everything very green and beautiful. But thankfully, while we were there, we didn't get a ton of rain. It was mostly sunny. It was very windy, something to be aware of.
I know different airlines have like different packing requirements. So what airline did you take when you were traveling? And do you think there would be like a huge difference between airlines and like how much you can take with you?
We flew with Aer Lingus, and overall it was pretty good. The key is like when you're traveling is that you want to pack light, because especially if you're traveling solo or even in a group, you want to be able to like carry all of your luggage at one time. So you don't want to have to be like rolling multiple suitcases. And also you don't really need that much. You can just go to a local laundromat and like take care of it, and it's a lot simpler than like packing a ton of clothes.
Okay, so Maddie, can you tell us a little bit about like the packing cubes? You know, could you just kind of explain a little bit more about what that is and, you know, how it's useful?
Yeah, so my mom gave me like a mesh packing cube bag, and it was super helpful because I was able to fit like the more bulky items in there, and then it just kept all of it together instead of it just like expanding in my bag. And that just gave me extra room to pack a couple of extra things and also have room for souvenirs, which is also really fun. I brought a windbreaker for my jacket so that it could be like easily condensed. So I fit it in a bag about like that big, and I just rolled it up really small. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. Honestly, like, I don't know if you guys, my audience, have seen, but there's these like suitcases that have like that vacuum sealed, like where like there's no air bubbles in your luggage, and you can just like, and you just like vacuum it like backwards, you know, the suction suitcase. Those. So what would be the difference between like the packing cubes and like those like cool like invention, like very Gen Z type of like travel storage things? I don't know.
So the vacuum seal is great, but you have to have a vacuum with you for it to work. And when you're traveling abroad, that's not always an option. So the packing cube is more like, mine was like mesh, probably about that big, and it just like holds everything together, because when like you can just roll things up really small, but like my jeans and some of my t-shirts, like they don't like to stay small, so they like start unrolling, and then also it just Yeah, it helped keep everything together really nicely. And then I just knew, like, oh, this is in this. And I didn't have to rifle through my entire bag to find something. I just knew, okay, this is outside of the packing cube and this is in the packing cube. And it just helped with organization as well.
Okay. So Maddie, can you tell me a little bit about like where exactly you want to go in Dublin that are like, like what are some like main attractions that you encourage people to see when you go to Dublin? Also, like, are there attractions that you want to see that would like require passes, or reservations early? What do we need to know?
I would say when you're thinking about like where you're going to be staying, like Dublin is a great place because it's the capital. It's the center of a lot of things to see, which we're going to go into later. But there is a pass that you probably want to reserve ahead of time that will allow you to get into certain castles or museums or events that you definitely don't want to miss out on. So definitely want to look into that pass, and then once you look into that, look at where it's going to get you and if there's any like tickets or things you need to book ahead of time. Like if you want to go see Riverdance while you're there, which is what we were able to do, like you need to book your ticket a good amount of time so that you can actually get in to see it. So,
And what was maybe your favorite attraction that you went to when you were in Dublin?
oh, goodness, there was so many cool things. I think one of my favorite things was when we went to the post office, which sounds really weird, but it has a lot of historical significance, and it was a magnificent post office. It's just beautiful. It has like giant pillars in front, and it has so much history. So
Wait, that's so interesting. So, like, the American post office is usually like dirty. I don't know. I'm a California person. Shout out, So like, and I'm also from Bakersfield. I think I already said that, but like our post offices are just so like dirty, and like homeless people are there, and like so like what's like the huge difference, between Ireland's post office and is it just the fact that it's artsy and old timey? And I guess, well, now we just learned that it has a lot of history.
I think so. This is the General Post Office in Dublin, and it was the place where a lot of the resistance fighters went during the Easter Rising Rebellion. And the walls were like, it's built like a fortress. So the walls were like 6 feet thick. And there's like a huge basement, which is now a museum, which I would totally recommend going to because it, like, you just learn so much. When I went to Ireland, I knew like almost nothing about Irish history, like literally nothing. I just showed up and then I was like, oh my word, this is so cool. Because when you get up to the post office and you look at the pillars, like there are dents in the pillars from bullets being shot at it, which is just so cool to me because I'm a history nerd and I just find that stuff amazing. And the only way that they were able to get the men fighting for Ireland out was to set the roof on fire. That was the only way that they were able to get them out. So it's such
no other way. Just set it ablaze.
It's built like a fortress. It's built out of stone, except for the roof. So it's still a functioning post office today. You can still send your mail from there, but it's also a really cool historic museum.
Time out. What's the roof made out of? So, Maddie, tell me a little bit of like what you did when you were in Dublin. Like what were your favorite spots? What were your favorite things to do, when you were there? Just kind of give us like an insight into like your brain, your processing, when you were out and about and having fun.
So Dublin was a really fun city. It's very historic. There's a lot of stone. It's so different than any of our cities here. Because like we're going to school near LA and that's just a very interesting city. And there's a lot of history there too. But Dublin, it's so different. It's so much stone. It's so old compared to LA. It's just very like, it's like, oh, here's something from like the 5th century. And you're like, say what? How is that still standing? So there's plenty to do in Dublin. Like just walking around the city is just so cool. There's also Trinity College, which is really neat. A lot of very notable historical figures graduated from the school. You can get tours there. and that was really neat. There's also plenty of museums. Like I mentioned, in the post office, there's a museum down in the basement area that you can get a tour there. We got a really neat tour from a local, and she just like was so passionate about Irish history and went into so much detail that we learned so much from her, and just our time there, that it was amazing. There's also plenty of like cafes and pubs that you can go in to like get food or drinks, and the food was just so good. And so like I got some really good tea while I was there. It was like they know what they're doing with their food there. It was really good. There's also Dublin Castle. Dublin Castle is still a functional castle. They still use it for political events. We got to go in this really cool room where like several U.S. presidents had been in to like deal with international affairs, which was really neat. And then there's also on part of our tour where we got to see like part of the original Dublin Castle, which is like buried feet within the earth. So that was really neat. And then also from our hotel, we were able to walk to the Jeannie Johnston, which is one of the famine ships. That was the significance of the Jeannie Johnston, is that it was the only famine ship where none of the passengers died on their way to America. And that was very rare, because most of the ship captains, with all of the poor people fleeing Ireland, was like, we're going to pack as many people on here as we possibly can. And the captain of the Jeannie Johnston was like, actually cared about human life. And so he made them practice hygiene. He had a doctor on board, and everybody survived. And they even had a baby born, and he made it alive to the U.S. And it was like they had a picture of him like all grown up and now living his life in the U.S. with his family. So that like it's just so much history, and very there's so much to see in Dublin, so much to do, and it's great to like just walk around. So I would recommend staying in Dublin and then just walking around the city, because driving would be an absolute nightmare. There's so many one-way streets and like just giant tour buses and taxis.
So, what are some fun like day trips that are around Dublin, not necessarily in Dublin, that we can be looking out for?
Yeah, so there's some really beautiful places to see right outside of Dublin. Three places that we went. The first one was the Giant's Causeway, which is very well known. Like people have it on their computer screen, and it's just like very aesthetic. It's a volcanic rock formation of like hexagonal rock shapes that look like little stepping stones, and there's like huge stacks of them that are like super high, and then they just like kind of get lower, and then they just like disappear into the ocean. There's Giant's Causeway, and there's one in Ireland, and there's one in Scotland. And so the myth goes is that two giants built it so that they could be friends, and then they became enemies. And so the giants tore apart the middle, and so that's why it only goes partially into the sea on both countries. So there's a Giant's Causeway in Scotland and in Ireland.
That's pretty cool, actually. So you said that was like a myth, right? Like it's not a biblically accurate story.
No, but the giant, like that's why it's called Giant's Causeway, is that's how the giants used to get from Ireland to Scotland. Obviously, it's just a rock formation that's beautiful. So if you feel like a day with a light hike and exploration, like I would put that very high on the bucket list. Another place that we went that was on the way to Giant's Causeway was the Carrick-a-Raid rope bridge, which is basically an old salmon fishing bridge. So it's a rope bridge, and it's like between the mainland and a very small island that just basically looks like it comes up out of the water. And the rope bridge is what gets you there. And it looks a little rickety, but it's actually super fun. And it's just beautiful. And the water is so like blue, green. Like there's so many colors happening. And it's just really peaceful. You can just sit on the little island for a little bit and just like take in the beauty of God's creation and feel the salt water spray. And it was just so beautiful. So if you feel like another little light hike after, being in the city and you want to just get out into creation, those are two really good places to see. Another one that is it's the other direction, but it's still like a day trip outside of Dublin, is the Waterford Crystal Factory. And apparently we had some growing up, and I just was like totally ignorant as to what that meant, as most children are when it comes to breakable things. And
she was a breakable child.
The Waterford Crystal Factory was so cool. It almost got shaved out of our trip because of a time constraint, but we like last minute made it to our tour, and it was amazing. It's like you walk through the whole factory and you go and you get to see like just people blowing into the crystal and like heating it up, and there's no like protective glass between you. It's like you're on a walkway and they're down there like just doing their job, and the tour guide is just like talking about it's like a 10 to 20 year apprenticeship project like to be able to work there. And so they value their quality and making very beautiful pieces, and they let us touch it. I don't know why, because I was terrified, but it was just like, oh my goodness. And then you get to like walk into their beautiful gift shop, and like everything is like really expensive, and you're like
as Europe is. Okay, so what is currency change, Maddie? Explain it to me like I'm 5.
So they don't use dollars and cents like we do here. They have their own currency in Ireland. And the thing is, because there's Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, they use euros in the Republic and they use pounds in Northern Ireland. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing currency exchange, like at the airport or with your bank, to make sure you have money to spend while you're there, which I would recommend, because when we went, we just used our card, like my debit card, or I used my debit card. Not everybody did. I used my debit card for everything, but it was also a little bit limiting because like there were some little shops that didn't just want to, like they didn't take card. And so it was like kind of sad because like if you found a nifty little gift, then it was like, oh, well, I don't have any pounds or euros to spend. So I would recommend getting like a small amount of euros and pounds, but also like when you get it, get enough for the whole trip, because the exchange rate is expensive. And it was really sad when we did an exchange for my grandma. We just ran up to they had a little exchange machine in a grocery store, and we went and exchanged it, and it was like $3 or $4 less. Like we put in like $20 and we only got like 15 euros, and it was really sad.
Wait, that's like so expensive.
Yeah, so like do it all at once. Don't just be like, oh, I'll get enough for this time. Just, yeah, that was one thing. And also, like, if you are using a card, like, check with the credit card company to make sure they're not going to be charging you extra for international fees.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So just be rich when you're traveling to Europe, basically.
Or just be aware, travel smart.
And with all that said, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Northwestern Adventures. I am your host, Taya Bray.
And I'm Maddie Miller.
And we'll see you all on the next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye.